On today's show, Houston Rockets midseason review part 2, grades for Alperen Sengun, Tari Eason, Amin Thompson, and Reed Sheppard. Who's been the Houston Rockets MVP, most improved player, and second half expectations? It's all coming up right here at Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's up and welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian and credentialed media member. I'm also the host of Locked On NBA Thursdays. Be sure to follow along wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube. Just search Locked On Rockets, where the best way you can help us grow our show is to listen every single day on a podcast platform of your choosing. Like and subscribe on YouTube. Drop us a comment while you're there. Give us your thoughts. Give us your grades for these individual performances, as well as who you think the Rockets MVP is, who you think the most improved player is, and what your second half season expectations are for this squad. If you missed part 1 of our review series, be sure to go back and check out that episode. Now, today's episode is sponsored by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off of your first purchase. And as always, thanks so much for making Locked On Rockets part of your day every single day, whether it's on your way to work, on your lunch break, in the gym. Thank you so much for being an everydayer. And joining us now for part 2 of our Houston Rockets mid-season review is none other than the podfather himself, Rockets Wire editor and host of the Logger Line podcast, Ben DuBose. You can track down on Twitter at Ben DuBose. Now, if you missed part 1 of our Rockets season review, where we talked about Jalen Green, Jabari Smith Jr., Cam Whitmore, and Ime Udoka, as well as what we've learned and some of the biggest surprises, go back, tune into that episode previously. In today's episode, we're going to be focusing on Alperen Sengun, Tari Eason, Amin Thompson, and Reed Sheppard, their individual grades for their performances so far this season, as well as who's been the Rockets MVP, their most improved player, and second half season expectations. And Ben, where we're going to have to start this one, similar to how we started with Jalen Green in our first episode, we got to talk Alperen Sengun. Look, Alperen Sengun played like an all-star last season. He cemented himself as the Houston Rockets' best player. He was their most consistent player. He was kind of their foundational piece that very quickly early on last year, we saw Ime Udoka trusting and leaning into becoming the go-to guy, becoming basically the pillar for the Houston Rockets offense, where everything would run through Alperen Sengun, whether it was post-ups or face-ups in the half court, or just, screening and rolling, or even in transition, different opportunities for him to, involve himself in the offense. And we've seen that continue so far this season. He's putting up all-star level numbers, averaging 19.4 points per game, 10.5 rebounds a game, just over 5 assists, as well as right at about 2.5 stocks per contest. What are you going to grade Alperen Sengun for his play through 41 games so far?
I'm going to give him a B+, only because of the shooting. He needs to be more efficient. He needs to make more shots near the rim. And the standard is higher because, look, there's a reason why the Rockets gave him a 5-year, $185 million extension before the year. He is someone they know will be, at a bare minimum, a very good player in the NBA for a long time. Unlike Jalen Green, who there were a few more questions about going into the year, and I think that's reflected in the contract that he got, specifically the years, with Sengun, they knew the floor was extremely high. And so at a bare minimum, he was going to be a fringe all-star type player, and we hope he can be more than that. We hope he can, fulfill the Jokic archetype. Time will tell on that. He's had a very good year. I would argue that he should be an all-star, but I do think that seeing a little bit of regression on the offensive side, finishing near the rim and the free throws over the last month or so, that keeps it from being an A. And I think, again, we're grading him on a curve because with what Sengun showed last year, the bar is a little bit higher for him than it is for others. But I think Alp himself would be the first to tell you that he can and should be better on the offensive end of the floor. That as good as he has been, there's a clear next level that he can get to as a player if he just gets back to who he was in year 3 in terms of finishing near the rim and efficiently scoring the basketball. And so by and large, still a very good year. I would say he deserves to be an all-star, but based on the Sengun standard, I'm going to say B+.
I think I'm right there with you on the B+. I think that when you look at the numbers, right? So last season, Alperen Sengun shot 69% at the rim. Nice. And just under 50% between 3 and 10 feet. So like those little push shots and floaters and the fadeaways that we see him routinely take. This year, both of those numbers considerably down. Now they're trending upwards. He's gotten a little bit better, but they're still not anywhere near where you'd like them to be. He's shooting just over 64% at the rim. So almost 0.05 percentage points less. And then only 44% between 3 and 10 feet. So those numbers definitely taking a substantial hit this season. I mean, look, if Sengun was shooting with the same efficiency that he had last season, as well as doing everything else he was doing this season, he'd legitimately be in the MVP conversation for how impactful and how important he is to this Houston Rockets team. He's still been the team's best player. He's still been their most consistent player. Because again, everything in some capacity revolves around or involves Alperen Sengun offensively for how this team operates, the
He's
plays
also
that he
improved
makes
defensively.
Absolutely, right? I raved about that last episode as one of the biggest surprises of this Rocket season is just how improved Alperen Sengun continues to be and how impactful he's been on that side of the floor as well. So I think that Sengun has still had, to your point, a all-star worthy season. I think with the Houston Rockets sitting firmly at the 2 seed in the Western Conference, barring anything catastrophic or crazy happening, I think he is more or less a lock to make the Western Conference All-Star team. It would be an absolute disgrace if the Rockets didn't have at least one member of the second best team in the Western Conference, a bloodbath of a Western Conference, mind you, representing them at All-Star Weekend. And as it stands right now, yes, Jalen Green's on an insane tear, and even if he continues this insane tear into All-Star Weekend, it's probably a little, too little too late for Jalen Green this season to ultimately receive an All-Star nod. With the early return voting and all that stuff, it's just, I feel like he just has too much catching up to do, and there's just so many other elite guards that he would have to bypass to be able to get an All-Star selection. So hopefully this can be the start of Jalen Green's All-Star candidacy for next year, right? Where then the Rockets could potentially have 2 All-Stars on the Western Conference squad with Sengun and Jalen Green. But Sengun played like an All-Star last season. He's playing like an All-Star again this season. He deserves the selection. The biggest thing to me for Sengun, and the biggest area of growth that he still needs to improve on, is how he handles double teams. That's been something consistently that we've seen this season, and even less so just the double teams. It feels like his decision-making as a whole has maybe taken a little bit of a step back at times. Like, even there have been moments in games where he has like this weird like hesitancy around the rim where he's like not sure if he wants to pump fake or pass or do certain things. And I just wonder if he's just overthinking some certain things, and I've seen it suggested to me in the comments on the show on YouTube, and I've seen it on social media. And I really do wonder if how much of it is Sengun focusing a little bit too much on baiting fouls rather than just playing the game. This was something that I used to, Ben, I hated this. As much as I love the guy, I hated this about James Harden. Playing the game to play for the foul as opposed to just playing the damn game. Sengun is such a good player when he's just out there playing basketball, when he's playing freely, when he's playing to his strengths, when he's getting to his little finesse game and his pivots and spins in the post, or just powering through weaker defenders. And I think that some of that is he's gotten so good at drawing fouls that I don't want it to necessarily be a crutch for him. And the other knock that I will give him that docks him a couple points is the absolutely abysmal free throw shooting this season. That has been a killer for the Rockets in more than one game this year so far.
Yeah, I think the way I would phrase it, the NBA is a constant game of adjusting to the adjustments. And I think last year was the first year that Sengun emerged as the clear alpha or something close to that on a competitive team. And so with that, he started drawing a lot more attention from defenses. That's why I do agree with you. He's more likely than Jalen Green to make the All-Star team this year. I think whichever of them does make it, I guess there's a very small chance both could, but more realistically, I think it's going to be one. It's going to come down to the coaches voting because neither is going to make it as a starter. So the coaches select the reserves. And I tend to think that the coaches are going to give deference to Sengun because he's done it over a longer period. Coaches are not watching every single game for teams across the NBA. A lot of it is reputation. And so going back to last year, teams around the league, coaches around the league have been devising schemes to try and slow down Alperen Sengun in a way say that. I'm not going to say they don't pay attention to Jalen Green, but I don't think it's quite as elevated. I think it's started to become as elevated the last few weeks, but I don't think it's nearly as much going back to last year. And so I think having a year-plus sample of Sengun being at the top of the scouting report for these coaches when they try to play the Houston Rockets is going to put Sengun in a little bit of a higher tier than Jalen when it comes to, these coaches filling out their all-star ballots. But because of that, I do think that that's, a unique challenge for Sengun, and perhaps, that's going to be something that Jalen has to deal with as well as his sample grows larger. But teams are going to defend him in different ways. And I think we started to see opposing defenses challenge him in new ways, take away the simpler reads. And I just think the word that I would go to with Sengun is indecision. It seems like he's caught in between with his processing. Should I attack? Should I create? Which guy should I be looking for? And perhaps the fouls play into it as well. It just doesn't feel like he's nearly as decisive as he's been when he's at his best and when the game is free flowing. And so that's what I would like to see him get back to. I think some of it is other coaches give credit to defenses. There's lots of good defenses around the league. Coaches are smart. They're making adjustments. And now it's time for Sengun to adjust back. And perhaps Jalen Green's surge will help him do that. And that now there's more respect that's going to be paid to other positions on the court. Maybe that makes it easier for Sengun to get going. I think it's a combination of a lot of things. Step one will be simply Sengun making more shots at the rim, getting more confident, making defenders pay even more attention to him when he has those opportunities. And when they do, that's going to open up more for him from a playmaking capacity.
Yeah, I mean, to your point about Jalen Green's play opening up more for Sengun, I mean, here in the month of January, I mean, Alperen Sengun averaging 21 points per night. He's shooting, still right at about 50% from the floor. He's still having some of those issues with the bunnies and whatnot, but the double teams haven't been nearly as consistent here in January because defenses have to pay more attention to Jalen Green. So that's the benefit is now teams, they can't, if they double Jalen, it's a free lane for Alperen Sengun. If they double Sengun, Jalen gets to attack a scattered defense. Like that's the benefit of having two guys who are playing as well as these two are, and then two guys who can and should be feeding off of each other on the offensive end of the floor. So we both gave Alperen Sengun a B+. We want to know your grade for Alp this season. Coming up, we're going to get into Tari Eason, Amin Thompson, and Reed Sheppard, as well as who the Houston Rockets MVP is through the halfway point of the season, their most improved player, and second half expectations. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by Ultimate College Basketball. I want to take a moment to introduce you to a brand new mobile game that I'm actually really excited about, Ultimate College Basketball HC. If you've ever dreamed about being a college basketball head coach, this is your chance to step into those shoes. In Ultimate College Basketball HC, you control every detail of your program, from recruiting players and hiring coaching staff to overseeing training camps, handling NIL deals, and managing scholarships. It's all in the palm of your hands. And when it comes to game time, you get to draw up offensive plays and set your strategy. The way you play won't just affect the current season, it will shape the future of your school's basketball program. It's a game that lets you feel the full weight and responsibility of what it means to be a head coach and lead your team to glory. Here's a special offer for Locked On Rockets listeners. Use promo code LOCKEDONCBB, all caps, inside the game store to get a free boost for your program. It's the perfect way to kickstart your coaching career. Download Ultimate College Basketball HC. Just visit ultimate-cbb.com or look it up on the app stores. Ultimate College Basketball HC. Begin your coaching legacy today. Today's episode is also brought to you by Game Time. Look, I love going to live events. It's the absolute best, whether it's going to a basketball game or a concert or the theater or a comedy club. One of my favorite memories was going to a concert last year, and I bought the tickets on Game Time, actually. The energy, the excitement, it was truly unforgettable. Now Game Time's made it even easier to get tickets for your favorite events with their new feature, Game Time Picks. The feature filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of different tickets. Earlier this month, I was actually looking for some Rockets tickets near the end of the month, trying to go with some friends, and I was using the Game Time app, and it made it so easy. With Game Time Picks, I was able to find amazing deals, and I could even see the view from my seat before buying. The super deal was really impressive, offering great seats at unbeatable prices. Plus, the app's all-in pricing shows the total cost up front. They are fully transparent, no surprise fees at checkout, so take the guesswork out of buying your tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. All right, Ben, Tari Eason. unfortunately, had the weird little injury saga, missing 13 straight games with the leg sore, or sorry, injury maintenance and then leg soreness. I just wish they would have been up front with us when they first announced that.
Just call it leg soreness. It's not injury management.
Please, right? Just for everybody's sake, for all of our mental health sake involved, please just do that for us next time, Rockets. We beg of you. But outside of the anomaly with the injury stuff with Tari Eason, how would you evaluate his season to this point?
I would grade him a B, and that's factoring in the injury, because I just, availability is a big part of the equation. I think for Jalen Green, who started nearly 150 consecutive games in the NBA, the fact that he's able to go out there and take on that workload every single night, that's an asset for him. And with Tari, look, if we were grading him
through bumps and bruises for Jalen, I want to give him credit, right? Like he's dealing with like the lingering, like he like jammed his thumb in a game the other day, right? He's been like grabbing at it and stuff.
The bruise on top of his knee.
Yeah, so he's battled through a number of different like lingering injuries and stuff, and none of it has really left him sidelined for very long, if at all. So credit to Jalen Green for being kind of an Iron Man to this point in his career. Absolutely.
Yeah, and with Tari, let's be clear, this is not a matter of toughness. This is an issue that required surgical intervention last season. So this is not a nothing burger. This is not something that he can just tough it out and he's choosing not to. No, he's someone who played all 82 games as a rookie. He is a tough guy. It's not easy for anyone to play all 82 games. It almost never happens anymore in the load management NBA. So this is not calling Tari Eason soft at all. This is a very serious issue that unfortunately happened to him. However, to see the same issue come up for a second consecutive season, and now he missed 13 games out of the first half, 13 of 41, that's not insignificant. And so while it's not his fault, and if we were strictly evaluating Tari based on the level of player he's been in his minutes, I don't see how you wouldn't give him an A or an A+. I have to give him a B simply because the injury has curtailed his availability. It is a part of his story. Now, hopefully this is standard after that surgery, and as he gets, we've heard Steven Adams say that with lower leg issues, which we know he had knee surgery last year, it's basically a 2-year recovery process. So Steven, we have seen him getting healthier throughout the year. Hopefully that's going to happen with Tari as well. And then in year 4, when he's 2 years removed from the surgery and all the issues he had in his sophomore campaign, hopefully he gets back to, the Iron Man he was as a rookie. And if that's the scenario, maybe the Rockets get him at a discount this summer because he enters a contract negotiation summer coming off his minutes and games being, lower than they otherwise would be. That's the hope. But for now, as good as Tari's played, I have to give him a B simply because the availability, and it's not a random injury. It's not like he just turned an ankle. It's the same issue that he had a year ago. It's a little bit of a red flag. It's not a major red flag. He has looked good since returning. So knock on wood, fingers crossed. I am hopeful that he'll be okay moving forward, but I can't give him an A just based on the lack of availability.
I had Tari Eason as an A-,
okay,
but I'm gonna dock him one more tier down to a B+ for the points that you illustrated because of it. He talked me into it. You're absolutely right. Availability is the best ability, right? And so for Tari Eason missing 13 straight games, that is problematic. And even earlier this season, right, being on a minutes restriction to start the year was a little bit of a concern. So I do agree with you there. That can't be something that you just completely look past. It is a chunk of the season. It's worth noting. I will say, though, I do think Tari has also grown his game considerably. I think that there's things that we're seeing from Tari, the ability to attack closeouts, to handle the ball in transition, to make the right read, to make the extra pass. He
doesn't do all that his first 2 years. Yep. Yeah,
exactly. So just, we're starting to see Tari Eason level up a little bit as a player. And we talked about it a little bit there in our part 1 of our series, and we might get into it a little bit more here in just a moment when we talk about Amin Thompson. But right, Tari Eason is one half of the Terror Twins, and the Terror Twins were what made the Houston Rockets one of the best defenses in the NBA this season. His impact has been huge for this Houston Rockets team. So much so to the point that there were legitimate arguments earlier this season about should Tari Eason be starting over Jabari Smith Jr. Like, he's a starting caliber player right now in his, third year, really kind of his second year in the NBA since he missed so much of his actual second year in the NBA due to that weird leg injury. So I'm right there with you. I'm going to give Tari Eason a B+. He's been fantastic, and knock on wood, hopefully he's done with the injury stuff for the rest of this year and he's able to stay healthy and available for the rest of this campaign. Let's talk a little bit about the other Terror Twin, Amin Thompson. Hang on.
He's bad. He's not good. He's not good at all.
Sorry, I love that quote from Amin. It's he's the other thing too. I just want to, before we even talk about the basketball stuff, I just want to note that like Amin Thompson's personality has shined through so much more brightly this season. Like last year he was very like quiet, reserved, like kind of like at times even a little introverted or awkward maybe. And this year, like he's like cracking jokes in media availability. He's poking fun at teammates, and he had the quote the other night when he was talking about Jalen Green, where he's like he's unguardable, right? He's except for me. Tell him I said that, right? Like the little like those little. He's got the makings of the face of a franchise and a star level player. And that's before we even get to the basketball stuff, like just the personality. He's easily one of the best personalities on this Houston Rockets team.
Oh, absolutely. And in addition to all the normal, limitations on rookie players, it shouldn't be lost that he basically wasn't healthy last year. He sprained the ankle, I think, in his third game and missed almost 2 months with that. And then he had that weird illness that kept him in and out for like 2 or 3 weeks. And I was told during the offseason, he was about 15 pounds for the second half of last season, below what his normal playing weight is. And so if you're that much underweight, imagine what that does to, your confidence, your fluidity, being able to trust your body to hold up in the ways that you're accustomed to. So I think in addition to all the normal things that come from playing in the NBA for the first time as a rookie, not being healthy, both with the ankle and then just his overall body after the illness, I think that sort of held him back a little bit. And so this year, hopefully, knock on wood, the calf issue he's dealing with now is minor and he's able to return this week and be just fine. Because, based on what he's shown you to this point, I can't give him anything but an A+. This one to me is very easy. He's been on a permanent basis the best player on this basketball team, even with two really good players in the starting lineup in Alperen Sengun and Jalen Green. And, we should throw Fred VanVleet into that mix as well, even if he's shooting a little bit below what he typically does. I would say on a permanent basis, Amin Thompson is the best player on this team. You're not going to be able to take him out of the starting lineup. I'm sorry. You're 9-2 with Amin Thompson starting. He's averaging basically 17 points, 11 boards, 3 rebounds, 2 blocks, 2 steals, something like that per game on insane efficiency. He can play make, he can guard 1 through 5. You're not going to be able to take him out. I tend to think they'll just go with what's working and bring Jabari off the bench. You can make a case to start him in at the 3 and, Jabari at the 4 and bring Dillon off the bench. I tend to think they won't do that because Dillon's more of a veteran than Jabari. And with Jabari out of the starting lineup right now, it's easier to say, you know what, you're in year 3, you're 21 years old, you're already out of the lineup just because of the random injury. Let's just stick with what's working. But they're going to have to start Amin Thompson because the best version of the Houston Rockets depends on maximizing Amin Thompson's minutes. He's too good to take out of the lineup. I don't know if he comes off the bench another game in his entire Houston Rockets career. I don't think that would be an overstatement to say, barring injury.
Yeah, I'm flat out A plus for Amin Thompson. Just he's been sensational, and I'm gonna say it right now. I'm gonna predict it when Jabari does ultimately come back from the hand injury. I would imagine that what the Rockets are gonna do is they're gonna do it under the guise of minutes limitation or whatever for Jabari, where they want him to cap his minutes on a certain nightly basis. So they'll come back with him exactly working him back, and then he just won't ever work back into the starting lineup, at least not this season, right? Maybe there's a future iteration of this Rockets team, and I mentioned this in our previous episode where the future front court is Amin Thompson, Jabari Smith Jr., Alperen Sengun. But at least for the rest of this season, it doesn't seem likely that Jabari Smith Jr. will regain his starting spot. Look, Amin has done so much to elevate everybody on this team. You talked about this in our last episode, pardon me, but just unlocking everybody in the starting lineup, the way that he complements this team, the way that he provides a new dimension, a new dynamic to the starting lineup. Like there's different ways to provide floor spacing in the NBA. And yes, the traditional sense is you want shooters, you want guys who can space the floor out to the perimeter, out to the 3-point line. And that's what, in theory, Jabari Smith Jr. is supposed to be able to provide for this Rockets team when he's in that slot. But when you have Amin Thompson in that slot, you have an escape value. You have a guy who is shown to be at least a semi-reliable corner 3-point shooter, although that's kind of tapered off a little bit as of late. But, having him be that release valve where he can cut in from the baseline or play out of the dunker spot, playing above the rim, attacking the glass the way that he does, generating those second chance opportunities with offensive rebounds on the inside, the athletic presence that he provides, the downhill scoring presence that he provides another secondary or tertiary ball handler in the lineup, somebody who can get downhill and attack the defense, taking some of that ball handling pressure off of Jalen Green and Fred VanVleet. He just provides too much to this Rockets team. And at the end of the day, maybe Dillon Brooks and Jabari Smith Jr. are a little bit duplicative of one another in their skill sets, where they're both just kind of those 3-and-D guys. Granted, Dillon Brooks can do a little bit more off the bounce than Jabari can as far as attacking and getting to his spots and, his little turnaround fadeaways and even just, driving and finishing around the cup. So for Amin, he's already the best defender on the team. He's one of the best defenders in the entire NBA. You're slowly starting to see him level up his offensive game, where his touch around the basket is continuing to increase, where he'll drive, he'll get to his little Euro step and hang in the air and hit little floaters or fadeaways or leaning shots or kiss it off the glass. Like, he's only going to get better. We are in year 2. Amin Thompson is going to be a future superstar. Amin Thompson is going to be, in the future, one of the best players in the entire NBA. I don't know if he's ever going to be the future point guard of this Rockets team. Yes, he was a point guard in OTE. Yes, he was a primary ball handler for much of his career. That may never be his future as an NBA player, but his future as an NBA player is still incredibly bright. And my God, I thank the Rockets every day that they did not pay attention to me when I wanted Scoot Henderson so bad. I saw a future like Chris Paul mixed with Russell Westbrook and everything with Scoot. And look, I'm not going to write off Scoot Henderson, but Amin Thompson is clearly the closest player to Victor Wembanyama in that draft class right now. And that is without a doubt. That's not bias. That's not anything. He is the closest thing to Victor Wembanyama from that last draft class. All right, let's get to our last guy here. The most recent draftee for the Houston Rockets, Reed Sheppard. How do you feel about Reed so far, Ben?
The cop-out answer would be incomplete because he's played so sparingly. I'll give him
the real answer is underwhelming. That's what it's been.
I'll give him a C. I mean, the numbers are what they are. He's shooting just 31% overall, 27% from 3. We knew the limitations he would have defensively as a rookie, undersized. He's not super physical, but this is a guy who was supposed to shoot the lights out, and he hasn't done that. Now, I'm giving him a C because there is context. Obviously, he's a rookie. He came off the bench at Kentucky. The sample with the Rockets has been incredibly small, and when he went down to the G League, he immediately produced. It's not like his confidence is shaken. As soon as he got a longer runway and some opportunity, the same things that made him such an attractive draft pick out of Kentucky immediately started flashing again. So because of that, I'm inclined to believe that a lot of his struggles, beyond just the usual caveats you throw out for every rookie, are because it's tough to be a rookie on a quasi-contending level team. And so I think a lot of what's happened to Reed as a rookie is just circumstance, and the Rockets don't have the time to give developmental minutes on a team that's this good and capable of winning every single game. So because of that, even though statistically you look at his numbers and you'd say, D or F, I'm not going there. The talent is enough, and there's enough other circumstances with this particular team being as good as it is that I'm going to give him a C. Incomplete would be easy, but again, we're not into being easy. We're trying to be fair. And I think the best way to balance it all, I'll say C.
I'm kind of along that same line. I'm going to go C-, following the same train of thought as you. Context is very important in this discussion surrounding Reed. The biggest part, though, right, the shot hasn't translated, and that's the one thing that you were expecting to translate. Very similar to Jabari Smith Jr., right, when he made it to the NBA and then suddenly couldn't shoot the basketball at all. That's concerning. When you can't live up to your number one skill as a draft pick, you've got to factor that into the grading, issues here. Now, I will say, with Reed Sheppard, I want to give a lot of credit to the Rockets, though. We talked about previously, the handful, 6 or 7 games that they have lost that they could have won. Credit to the Rockets. They came in with a plan to give Reed a chance. They wanted to see if he could be NBA ready. They wanted to see if he could thrive in minutes right out of the gate, and they stuck with it for probably longer than they should have, keeping him in the rotation before slowly starting to fade. And you saw it happen. It wasn't even like an immediate, like, okay, you're yanked from the rotation. It was, okay, you're going to start getting first half minutes. Okay, if you're not good in the first half, then we're going to go to Aaron Holiday in the second half. And then slowly over time, it was right around the in-season tournament that they just completely phased Reed Sheppard out, went with Aaron Holiday, and then they haven't gone back to Reed Sheppard since. So a lot of credit to Udoka and the coaching staff for giving him an opportunity to see if he was ready. He wasn't. Don't write him off yet. He is a rookie. Give him time. We will give him grace and see what that ultimately turns into. But yeah, C- for Reed Sheppard so far. Coming up, who's been the Houston Rockets MVP through the midseason point of this campaign? Who's been their most improved player? And second half expectations. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by OpenPhone. Look, running a small business means you're wearing a lot of different hats. Your personal phone becomes your business phone, and before you know it, you're juggling customer calls day and night. As your team grows, it becomes impossible to manage everything with just your personal number. That's where OpenPhone comes in. It's the #1 business phone system designed to help you keep your work and personal life separate. For just $15 a month, the cost of a few cups of coffee, you get complete transparency and visibility into everything happening with your business phone number. OpenPhone works through an app on your phone or computer and integrates with tools like HubSpot and hundreds of others. It also uses AI-powered call transcripts and summaries, so you'll have a rundown of your calls and action items the second that you hang up. And if you miss a call, no problem. Automated messages are sent directly to your customer, ensuring you never miss an opportunity to engage. Right now, OpenPhone is offering 20% off your first 6 months when you go to openphone.com/lockedonnba. That's OpenPhone, OPENPHONE.com/lockedonnba for 20% off of 6 months. OpenPhone.com/lockedonnba. And if you have existing numbers with another service, OpenPhone will port them over at no extra charge. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. All right, Ben, 41 games in, 28-13. Who has been the Rockets MVP through the halfway point of the season?
So I might catch some flack for this, but I'm going to say Amen Thompson. I think you look at the contributions he gives you on both ends of the court for a team they are top 10 offensively now. Credit to Jalen Green for picking it up in January, especially. But for a team that's been top 5 defensively all year long, he is by far their best defensive player. And even if offensively he has some limitations, I do think he makes the game significantly easier for guys like Jalen Green and Alperen Sengun. We know what numbers he puts up as a starter, basically 17 points, 11 boards per game. The stocks just jump off the page when he gets extended runway. And the big, caveat for men throughout the year is, well, his minutes are limited. Well, now he's averaging almost 30 minutes per game, and he's been right at, I think, 37, 38 since starting in place of Jabari Smith Jr., and I would be stunned if Amen comes out of the starting lineup at any point. I've said consistently that Amen is the most impactful player on this team on a per-minute basis when you look at what he does, not just offensively, but defensively, guarding anyone on the opposing team, being basically the foundation of an elite defensive team. And now that he is playing enough minutes to actually be a starting level player, it's close. You can make arguments for certainly Alperen Sengun and to a lesser extent Jalen Green as well. But I'm going to give the nod to Amen Thompson simply based on the value of his two-way production for a team that is truly two-way.
Yeah, honestly, I don't think you should catch any flack for that. I think it's a perfectly fair answer to give. I'm going to go the opposite direction, though. I'm going to go Alperen Sengun.
Okay.
I think that for everything that this Houston Rockets team is, how they've built so much of their offense around Alperen Sengun, the skill set that he has, there's not a single other player that can do the things that he does for this team on the offensive side of the floor. There's a reason that the Rockets offense does at times stagnate a little bit when he's not on the floor, because nobody can make the reads, nobody attracts the attention or has the gravity that he has playing out of the high post, posting up on the low block, collapsing the defense, kicking it out for open shots. Again, he's playing like an all-star this season, basically, hovering right at 20, 10, and 5 for the year. Kind of operating out of that, Nikola Jokic, Domantas Sabonis big man role. I think he's only trailing those two guys as far as assists per game as a big man. So it's third in the NBA in dimes per contest. I got to go with Amen Thompson. Or sorry, not Amen Thompson. I apologize. Look at you. You're convincing me even more. Amen Thompson. No, Freudian slip.
Yep.
Alperen Sengun for Rockets MVP. He's been their best player through the entire Ime Udoka era. Maybe that changes a little bit as Jalen Green continues to catch his stride and level up and take this leap that we think that he's in the midst of taking right now. But as it currently stands, Sengun is still the Rockets' best player. And everything that they do runs through him in some capacity. And again, the improved defense is the biggest key here. The fact that he has been in crunch time a reliable defensive piece, an overall plus defender for this team, speaks volumes about his growth and his commitment to adopting the identity and style that Ime Udoka has for this squad. So shout out to Alp for all the work that he's put in and how he continues to level up as a player. Now just hit your damn shots around the basket and we'll be happy. All right, most improved player for the Rockets this season. Ben, who you got?
So it'd be easy to say Amen Thompson since I just listed him as MVP. And
if you take my pick, I'm going to be pissed.
Technically, relative to last year, that would be true. But I think a lot of it's, well, number one, it's boring to say the same guy for both of those answers. And two, I think it's to be expected. I think a lot of what Amen went through as a rookie was based on some of the health issues. And so I largely expected this from Amen. I'm going to say most improved is Jalen Green. Certainly from the first 20 games of this season, when you look at what he's done in the second quadrant compared to the first, but even compared to last year, I've pointed out that the overall numbers in terms of the scoring per game, the efficiency are sort of similar from the last 40 games of this year to the first 40 of this year. But I think seeing the minutes per game that Jalen plays, being at 34, 35 all season long, he's not having those net zero games where Ime pulls him, because not only is he, shooting them out of games offensively and getting tentative, but then he lets it affect his effort on the defensive end. Ime trusts him pretty much every single game now to be in the closing lineup. He has enough gravity offensively, and he competes enough defensively to where he is a much more consistent player. Consistency doesn't always mean that you're going to shoot above 50% from the field. You're still going to have bad nights, but you need to at least make some level of impact on a game in, game out basis. And we're not seeing the zero games from Jalen that we saw as recently as, the stretch leading into the All-Star break last year, where it seemed like Ime Udoka was considering benching him from the starting lineup. So when you look at Jalen being a much more trustworthy player and the growth from the first 20 games to the second 20, I'm going to say Jalen is most improved.
All right. This might be the answer that I catch a little bit of heat from. I think that you can look at Jalen Green and say he's most improved. You look at the lens of this season, but I also think there's a level of expectation there where it's like, okay, we saw what Jalen Green did last March. We kind of thought, okay, is he going to come into the season with that level of play? So I don't want to say improvement, because it's like he's gotten back to where he was playing last March. So we've already seen him play that way is the problem, at least from my perception of it. With that said, I've been so impressed with Cam Whitmore. I'm going to give it to Cam. It's a small sample size, but since coming back to the team, it really feels like he's playing a much, much better version of basketball. It feels like he's learned the lessons that he needed to learn. Yes, there's still some mistakes defensively, but on the offensive side, there's so many moments in a given game that they might not even result in assists. They might not actually hit the stat sheet, but just moments where you see Cam make the right read, make the extra pass, make the right decisions on the basketball court, giving effort defensively, making plays defensively, the deflections, playing the passing lanes, rebounding the basketball, right? Fighting after rebounds, boxing out, using his Cam has an NBA ready body right now. He's a man baby, right? And, and the fact that he's 6'7", 235, he uses that body now to actually box guys out below, watching him on a switch, bodying up to bigs down low to actually box them out. It's been really, I've been just wholly impressed with what Cam Whitmore has brought to this Rockets team since coming back. I think that he took the demotion, took it to heart, understood what he needed to fix, came back. Maybe there was a little bit of frustration in that, the post-game interview that everybody freaked out about and whatnot. But ultimately, there's been nothing that I've heard about Cam Whitmore off the court as far as being a locker room issue or anything like that. He's a great young kid. He's committed. He works incredibly hard, and he wants to be great. So I got to go with Cam Whitmore as far as my personal most improved player for this Rockets season so far. With that, Ben, expectations for the second half of this year?
For me, it's secure home court advantage in at least one round of the playoffs. I think the sample is large enough now to where a top 4 seed isn't just a goal, it should be the expectation. I think, so we're at the halfway point. The Rockets basically have a 3-game lead when you factor in the tiebreaker they have over the Memphis Grizzlies for the teams that are right beneath them in the standings. So they have a 3-game lead for number 2. The Rockets have 13 losses. The Grizzlies have 15. The Nuggets have 16. So there's already a buffer for the number 2. But the Grizzlies and Nuggets are good enough. And the Rockets do have, I think, the 6th most difficult remaining schedule. Memphis actually has the 4th most difficult remaining schedule. But it's close enough to where, okay, if they slip a little bit or if there's an ill-timed injury, we'll have to wait and see what happens with Amen Thompson's calf tightness. Then it wouldn't floor me if they dropped a couple of spots. But look at the standings below 4. Who is going to come up and jump them? I don't think either the Clippers or the Lakers, even if you buy into the Clippers with Kawhi, I highly doubt they play Kawhi enough games coming off, his own injury management to where they're a threat to win, 50, 55 plus games. I think the Mavs with Luka still not close to coming back. I don't think they're going to win that many games in total. Maybe the Timberwolves. I think Minnesota is a much better team than their record, but they're 7 games back. So even if you squint hard enough and you say, I believe in the Grizzlies and Nuggets, they're getting healthy, they're going to go on a run, then that still would only drop the Rockets to 4, and they have basically 3 games separation now. So I would hope the Rockets can hold on to the number 2 seed. I think that's doable. But in a worst case scenario, I think they should be top 4. Barring any sort of catastrophic injury luck, this team should have home court advantage in at least one round of the postseason. And with that, a decent chance to advance and play, hopefully multiple postseason series of high leverage basketball the same way the Oklahoma City Thunder did last season. To me, that's the goal at this point, it's more than the goal. It's the expectation, and assuming reasonable health, I think securing home court advantage in at least one round, avoiding the play-in tournament and getting home court advantage, to me, that's a realistic expectation that is on the table right now.
I love your framing of it, from changing it from goals to expectations. This team has far exceeded, I think, probably even their own expectations for this season. And with that, you do have to shift the goalposts a little bit. And I think that for this Rockets team, yes, they've played well enough. They are talented enough. They are good enough to get to and likely be favored and should win whatever first round series they ultimately come across. So yes, home court advantage. I agree with you. First round series win. I agree with you. Hopefully multiple playoff series to give them as much experience as possible. And then even more data points, right? For them to reevaluate this offseason and make those roster decisions and figure out what they need for this squad moving forward. I will also add on top of that, though, I would like to see Amin Thompson selected to All-NBA defensive first team. I think especially if he doesn't leave the starting lineup, I think he's going to be a shoo-in for an All-NBA first team defensive selection. Even if you factor in the fact that he came off the bench for the start of the season, I think that he'll have enough starts over the course of the entire season. And he's so impactful. And when you've got guys like Sam Vecini and other, national talking heads out there highlighting just how impactful he's been defensively, I think the narrative is out there. The Rockets, if they maintain that number 2 seed, I think he'd be a lock for that. We talked about it a little bit, throughout these couple review episodes, but at least one All-Star selection, please. What Alperen Sengun, he deserves an All-Star selection. He probably should have gotten one last year. I'm not going to say he was snubbed last year, but this year, number 2 seed, best player on the number 2 seed. He deserves it. He should get it. And the Rockets deserve some representation there. Last thing that I will say. And Ime Udoka as a finalist for Coach of the Year. He should absolutely be in that conversation as well. And maybe Amin Thompson in the conversation for most improved. Like, I don't know how far away he is as far as overall odds this season. Also, I hate it, but I'll also go back on that and I'll say, like, I hate the idea of like a top draft pick being in the most improved conversation, because it's like you're just living up to the hype at that point. So like, Cade Cunningham right now is the favorite to win NBA's most improved player, but like, to me, I don't think a number 1 overall pick, and maybe, so throw away what I said about Amin Thompson. He shouldn't be in the consideration for it. No, there should be a rule that if you're a lottery pick, just if you're a top 5 pick, you cannot be in the most improved conversation. You're just living up to the hype at that point. But with that, I do want to ask you really quickly before we round things out, who would be, just from an entertainment value perspective, narrative, storylines, all that, who would you like to see face the Rockets in the first round of the playoffs? Like, if you could pick, let's pretend they stay locked up at the 2 seed. If you can pick who the 7 seed is, who comes out of the top end of the play-in bracket, who do you want? Not from I think we would sweep them or whatever perspective, just like from the most entertaining, fun series possible. Who would you want to see?
I'm going to go with the Phoenix Suns. I think
that's good.
Because of all the implications. It's the old guard against the new guard. We know the Rockets, how they control the Phoenix draft capital moving forward. I think if you can make a statement that it's not just about the future, that the Rockets are the better team in the present as well, not saying you turn around and then trade for Devin Booker or Kevin Durant after that series. Quite frankly, you might be able to say, we don't need those guys. We're already better. We're already good enough to contend. So we'll just keep these picks as you fall out of relevance and, fortify our depth with lottery picks from the Suns in 27 and 29. And this pick could end up being good as well. But I think a Rockets-Suns storyline would be very juicy because of that. Rockets Clippers, you could talk me into the Harden reunion storyline, but I don't want to see it because the Clippers with Kawhi and Harden That's a little too dangerous for my liking. And of course, Rockets Warriors, there's always something there, but I've been traumatized by the Warriors enough. I don't want to see them again. I don't want to take potentially losing to the Warriors in the playoff series. I don't think the upside, if the Rockets beat the Warriors in the playoff series, I mean, of course we would troll, but I think nationally people would be like, whatever. The Warriors are on their way out. If the Rockets lose, we would get memed into oblivion for, if this Rockets team, number 2 in the West, then loses to whatever the ghost of the Steph Curry era Warriors, whatever they are now, we would never hear the end of it.
It's a lose-lose against the Warriors, right? If you win, it's going to be, finally, little brother finally got his get back against the big brother that's been punking him for years. And so I agree with you there on the Warriors front. I do think from an entertainment value perspective, the James Harden reunion and potentially eliminating him and Kawhi with the Clippers, but that is probably the most dangerous of all these teams that could potentially find themselves falling down to that 7 range. One that is a very interesting, because you did a shotgun blast. You took all the picks and you just shared your thoughts on all of them.
There's one I didn't that I don't want to see.
I have one that I do want to see, and that would be, but this one would be the longest shot I feel like of the bunch. The San Antonio Spurs.
Oh, that's a good one.
If the Spurs find themselves at the bottom end of the play-in tournament and then they win those couple games and they win at the top of the bracket, or again, if the Rockets fall a little bit down to, I guess they wouldn't have to fall. It would be 1 faces 8 and then 2 faces 7, whatever. The Spurs could be in a position where they face the Rockets if the Rockets stay at the 2 seed and they win those couple play-in tournament games, or if they advance up the standings a little bit. And I'll tell you what, facing Wemby and this version of the Spurs team as they're kind of on their come up and the Rockets have, taken their step forward. Look, this is going to be a very good Spurs team for many, many years to come. I hate to have to admit to that on this podcast, but you have Victor Wembanyama, who is going to be and is already one of the best players in the entire NBA, and they're playing winning basketball this season. I think they're probably a little bit further ahead of schedule than people thought they were going to be even this year. TBD on what happens with Chris Paul, whether they let him go before the season ends so that he can go chase rings with a contender. Who knows? But facing the Spurs in a first-round series and eliminating them would be a ton of fun. So that's my sleeper pick, although I think I'm leaning more towards one of the ones that you selected, either the Warriors or the Suns one is probably the best one. I really like that. What was the one that you didn't name?
I did not name Minnesota, who I think is in the 7 right now. I do not know how
they're in the 8 spot right now. They're in 8.
I do not know how that team is 22-20. I know there's no Karl Anthony Towns, but just based on the eye test, I can't help but think that assuming health, they're going to figure it out. And that team led by Anthony Edwards is not one that I want to see in the first round. They also have a great home court advantage, one of the better ones in the NBA when I'm watching on League Pass. So I do not want to see the Minnesota Timberwolves just simply based on the fact that I think they're better than their record. And I think they're going to be dangerous once you get into more of a half-court style of basketball in the playoffs. So that's one that I don't want to see. There's also no, juicy storylines or rivalries between the Rockets and Timberwolves to my knowledge. So for many reasons, that's the one at the bottom of my list. I would say Suns, the more I think about it, clearly at the top. Rafael Stone, you could make, we talked about the awards the Rockets could be in the running for. Rafael Stone could be an executive of the year.
There we go. Yeah,
and especially if the team that he bet against, the Rockets go out and beat them in the playoffs the next year. And, the young studs on the Rockets, because we know it'd be a very top-heavy series. If your guys like Alperen Sengun and Jalen Green and Min Thompson out-duel Kevin Durant and Devin Booker down the stretch of big-time playoff games, imagine the juice you would get out of that individually as well. To me, Rockets Suns is really, really fun. And the downside risk, that's the thing I keep going back to, is mitigated. If you lose to the Warriors, you get memed into oblivion. If you lose to a team like the Suns, I mean, it sucks, but whatever. KD is aging out. You can say they've got a little bit more experience. Rockets just got to get more seasoned. To me, it's huge upside if you win, downside if you lose. It's not great, but it's not the end of the world either, assuming the Suns don't go on a run and win a title or something crazy.
Don't forget about being able to eliminate Tom Ball's own Jimmy Butler in that series as well.
Assuming he gets
trade pending, right? So we'll see what ultimately happens there. We want your thoughts. We want your grades for Alperen Sengun, Tari Eason, Amin Thompson, and Reed Sheppard, as well as your thoughts on the season. Who's your MVP? Who's your most improved player? And who would you want to see in the first round series for this Houston Rockets team? Let us know in the YouTube comments. Ben, let everybody know where to track you down at.
Yep. Ben DuBose, the Logger Line, the Rockets Wire on Twitter/X, and rocketswire.usatoday.com for all your daily Houston Rockets news coverage.
That's going to do it for our Houston Rockets midseason review series. How are you feeling about the team sitting at 28-13 through 41 games? How would you grade the young core of the Houston Rockets, as well as Ime Udoka? Let us know in the YouTube comments. Remember, the best way you can help us grow our show is to listen every single day on a podcast platform of your choosing. Like and subscribe on YouTube. Drop the comments while you're there. Also, subscribe to our daily Locked On Rockets newsletter. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And we look forward to having you back right here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.